Today we're starting a brand new unit, and I think you're really going to like it. It's called Kings and Queens. So first we need to start with some vocabulary. Now, a kingdom is an area ruled or governed by a king or a queen. So it's where the king or queen controls. Royal is just a word used to describe something that's owned by a king or queen or anyone in the royal family. So princes, princesses. This crown is royal if it belongs to a queen. Then we have the word rules. This right here is an Egyptian pharaoh who ruled over Egypt. That means leads or makes decisions for. If you rule over an area, you make the decisions and you're in control of that area. And last but not least, we have servants. Servants are men or women who are hired and paid to take care of the king and queen, as well as their home and their land. So these two servants are actually carrying a queen right now in this box, so she doesn't have to walk. Imagine that. So we're going to be talking so much about kings and queens in this unit, but I am curious what you already know about kings and queens. So if you want to pause the video and tell whoever you're with what you already know about kings and queens, go right ahead. This is what I know about kings and queens. Your teacher is your leader in the classroom, right? So Mr. Malcolm and I, when we're teaching you, we make your decisions and we lead to make sure that everyone is doing what they're supposed to do. And in our country, in the United States, the person in charge of the country is called the president. But in some other countries, the leaders are called kings and queens. Now, kings and queens are different from your teacher or a president because they're not hired or elected. When we vote, we choose our president. So we all just voted, and remember, Joe Biden won the election, so he'll be the next president. But a king and queen, they don't get chosen in that way. They're just born into the royal family. So their moms or dads or family members were kings and queens too, and it gets passed down in the family. The children of kings and queens are called princes and princesses, and one day they will grow up to be kings and queens. So, a long time ago, pretty much all of the countries, or so many countries, had kings and queens, but now not as many do. But there are still a lot of countries that have kings and queens today, which is pretty cool. And those are the people we're going to learn about. So let's look at this map. Right here we have the United States, which we've been talking about, and we know that Washington, D.C. is over here. We have a president. But let's look over at some of the countries that have kings or queens. Over here we have the United Kingdom. That is in Europe. We also call it Great Britain, and it is a country that still has a king or a queen. Right here you can see, yep, the United Kingdom, and the fact that there still is a queen today. Some other countries that still have kings and queens today are Cambodia, which is down here, Denmark, which is up here, Japan, which is this island over here, Malaysia are these islands down here, Morocco is right here, Norway has a king or a queen, Saudi Arabia has a king or a queen. So there are still a lot of places that have kings and queens today. And like I said, we are going to learn more and more about it. Oops, let's keep going in this slideshow. There we go. Okay, listen carefully today to find out about different European kings and queens from long, long ago, including the places they lived and the different royal things that belonged to them. So look at this building right here. What do you think a building like this might be used for? Can you believe that this was actually someone's house? Well, it's not just any house, it's a palace. This palace used to belong to a queen of France. What do you think it's like inside? It must be nice if it were built for a queen. In fact, this palace has 440 rooms inside. As the leaders of their countries, kings and queens often had the biggest and best homes in the land, known as palaces or castles. As the leader, the queen or king rules a particular area of land and the people who live there. This area of land is called a kingdom. There used to be many, many kingdoms in the world. Today, however, there are not as many kingdoms or kings and queens as there used to be. Look at this picture right here. Who do you think this person is? Yeah, it's good to be a king. That is an old saying, and if you look at this king, whose name was King Richard II of England, you begin to get the idea of why this saying holds true. If you walk into a palace in England hundreds of years ago and saw this person, you wouldn't have any trouble guessing he was king. Look at that crown. As most important and powerful people in their kingdoms, kings and queens always got the best of everything. The best houses, the best clothes, and the best food. Kings did not have to say please and thank you. They didn't even have to dress themselves. They had servants to do that for them. So pretty much everything a king or queen used, touched, or owned was called royal. The soft, fluffy robes King Richard II wore were the royal robes. The cup he drank out of was called the royal cup. And if it was royal, that meant that only the king, queen, or someone in the royal family, like his daughter, princess, or his sons, the prince, were allowed to use it. In this picture, King Richard II is holding two things. In one hand, he has the royal orb, and in the other hand, he's holding the royal scepter. These were ceremonial objects or things that the king wore or held just to remind people who was in charge. The hat he's wearing is called a crown, which is no ordinary hat. Crowns were usually made out of some kind of precious metal, like silver or gold, and decorated with fancy jewels, like rubies and emeralds and sapphires. These jewels were called the crown jewels. Like the scepter and the orb, the crown was a very important symbol of the king's power. Pretty cool. Ooh, this is a close-up picture of a crown. It's made of gold and loaded with fancy pearls and other jewels. A hat like this would not be good for keeping the sun out of your eyes. And it wouldn't be very good at keeping your head warm. But if you were wearing it, it meant that you were the king or queen, the ruler of a kingdom. A few hundred years ago, it would have been nice to be a king or queen ruling your very own kingdom, making all the rules and laws that people had to follow. But it would also have been very difficult. Kings and queens had big responsibilities. Every day, people came to them to ask for money or advice, and every day they had to make important decisions about things that were happening in the kingdom. A famous king named Charlemagne was so important that an artist made a stained glass window with this image. Look at his fancy chair. Do you see this? The king's chair is called a throne, and you might imagine only the king was allowed to sit there. His throne was raised up on a platform so he would appear tall and important, even when he was sitting down. And what's in his hand? Charlemagne is holding a sword and an orb to, again, remind people that he's the king. Over the next couple of weeks, you're going to learn more about kingdoms, kings, queens, and everything having to do with royalty. Thanks for listening, kindergarten. Go ahead and click on the exit ticket below and get ready to talk about this story with Mr. Malcolm.